Okay, today's topic is theme. Okay, I'm going to go through and grade the kids' write-ups from last week when we're done here. But today we're going to talk about theme. So, theme. What is a theme? Dora had an answer for that a minute ago.
It's the message.
Okay, it's the message of the book. So one of the most common things, I think I mentioned this already, that I get asked, especially by new writers, is where do you get your ideas for a book from? Okay, there's a difference between your initial idea, what do I write, for a book or a story or a short story or anything, and there's a difference between your initial idea and then like how do you figure out how to write the book from that. And I think there are a lot of different ways that you can get that initial idea. It could be an idea of a conflict. It could be something about a character. You could say, what if I had a character who? In fact, there's an author named Patricia Briggs, and she writes, her most famous series is called the Mercy Thompson series, and it is about a shapeshifter, but the shapeshifter isn't a wolf shapeshifter, which is the most common, and there are werewolves around, but she's a coyote shapeshifter, okay? But when I was talking to her at a writer's conference, that's the Mercy Thompson series, but when I was talking to her at a writer's conference, she was telling me about a story that she wrote, and she said that she actually got the idea from for the story. She said, what if I had a character who was really smart, like maybe one of the smartest people ever, but he couldn't speak well. Anytime he tried to speak, his words didn't come out right. He fumbled and bumbled. And it wasn't just he couldn't get up and publicly speak well. It was he literally couldn't talk well. He could not articulate what he was thinking ever. Not just if he's nervous, all the time. He was not a good speaker, okay? And so she said everyone would assume that he was dumb, right? Mm-hmm. And that was the idea that she had in her mind, and that became this whole book series that she put out, okay? So an idea can come from a character, from a conflict, or very frequently from a theme. So there was a book, I'm trying to remember what it was called, a movie. I don't know, it might have started out life as a book, a lot of movies do. But it was, I think it was called like Cider House Rules or something. But the author set out to write a book, or whoever wrote the screenplay, the whole thing was supposed to be about abortion. And they didn't want it. Do you guys know what abortion is?
Nope. No.
It's when someone's pregnant and they choose to terminate the pregnancy. Oh. Okay, so instead of having the baby does not make it. It does not survive, and they don't have the baby. Okay, and they didn't want in this movie to show that abortion was wrong, and they didn't want to show that it was right. They wanted to show both sides, and so they literally walked into that movie with the idea of showing the good and the bad. That was their theme, was this topic, right? It was a topic. Generally speaking, most themes, but not always, most themes will express an opinion on something. So it won't just be abortion like a topic. You'll come away from it thinking abortion's bad or abortion's good, right? And you'll usually come away from it at least knowing what the author thinks, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just explore something, right? And I think then you could even list it as the theme is that the concept of abortion is more complicated than people make it out to be, right? In some ways it's bad and in some ways it's good, or whatever. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that I think was the theme of that movie. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're going to talk about two right now because these are two of the books that were on the summer reading list. Okay. So this first book, Dora, I know you've read it. Emmy, you've read it too, right? What is out of my mind about, Emmy?
It's about someone who's really smart and she can't talk at all.
Okay. And she's in a wheelchair.
And she can't walk.
Yeah, so her name's Melody, and Melody is the main character, and it's told from what point of view?
In her head.
First person. So it's first person, and I think it's first person present.
Yeah, it's...
Yeah, so it's first person present.
But sometimes she has like...
Oh no, maybe it says he said.
Sometimes...
She knew. Okay, so it's first person past, but it is told in first person.
But soon
I don't know. This one says, I hate the stupid snowman. I have a large plexiglass tray. So this is first person present.
Yeah, but it's also kind of past because sometimes she says like when she
I can't tell. It looks like it goes. Yeah, so that's right. So some of these, you're right. So that's why I'm confused. It has chapters in first person past, which are talking about when she was smaller, and then chapters in first person present, because the story sort of alternates between things that happened to her and things that are currently happening, right? Like so what happened, so if I asked you, what is the topic of this book, what would you say?
I would basically say the topic of the book is how Melody can't talk.
Okay.
And
So-
she loves words and songs and everything that she can't really do. She wants to
Okay.
talk, but she
So the
can't.
conflict becomes she has a lot going on in her mind, but she can't figure out how to communicate any of that to the world, right? So the conflict is how can she, and so what does she typically do? She screams or throws a fit or waves her arms around to the extent that she can, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there has been a lot of disappointment and frustration for her, but she starts to try and figure out ways to communicate that are not just speaking. And by the end of it, she's much better at communicating, yes?
Yep.
She's kind of helped them figure out what systems and computers and stuff they can have, because initially doctors didn't even believe that she had anything going on in her mind, right? They didn't realize how
the
smart
book
she was.
is out of my mind. I
Yep.
highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's really good. So,
Dora.
all right, so listen though, I would say that the theme here, let's see if anyone can take a stab. What do you think the theme is, Dora? Tessa?
I think that the theme is that she really can't talk, but she really wants to, and so she tries really hard to to be able to communicate with others.
Okay, so hang on. What you guys are telling me, theme is not going to have much in the way of events that happened. That's more of a summary of what the book is about, which isn't wrong at all. But when we're talking about theme, yes, Dora.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Okay.
That's like
So that's fine. So what you're telling me, that's a cliche that's used a lot. Don't judge a book by its cover. The theme that would represent, Eli, did you want to offer something?
When you work for something, you can usually accomplish it.
Okay. So that's kind of an upbeat theme. If you really work hard, hopefully you can achieve something, right? I think that the theme of this certainly has to do with her personal journey, but I think it also has to do with the people with whom she is interacting. Her family and her
Catherine,
friends,
Rose.
right? So there's a set of people at home and there's a set of people at school. And I think to me, but see, novels like this are probably going to have several themes and they could all be right, okay? So there could be a theme that has to do with her personal development, her frustration and disappointment, and she could have just given up and lived a just terrible, miserable life. But she didn't, right? She continued to try to show people that she was very bright and smart. And you know, if you haven't read it, she gets to go to school and eventually they figure out that she's smarter than they thought and she gets more and more support and she ends up being part of a quiz team. And the students there at first feel like she is a drag. And then a lot of the other people are fairly ignorant and do not understand what things she needs. And they think somehow she's cheating with the computer she uses to talk on this quiz team. And she has to surmount a lot of things like that, right? And so to me, the theme is sometimes we're our own enemy or we get in our own way, but a lot of times they're external forces. And if we keep trying, we can teach those around us how to accept and how to love. And so I think there are a bunch of different themes we could pull from that. Any of those would have been right. Okay, so here's Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book. Dora, I think you're the only one who's read this,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell me a little bit, well, Dora and
Eli's
Eli,
read
but
it.
Eli's not over here. He's not really participating in this for some reason. So Dora, why don't you tell me a little bit about The Graveyard Book?
So it's a kid who's kind of raised by ghosts.
Okay. So at the very beginning of the book,
Oh, I wasn't.
there's the initial conflict is that his family is killed and he has to decide what to do. Does he cower in fear or does he run away? And what does he do?
He runs away.
He runs away and he ends up in a graveyard and there are a lot of ghosts that end up taking care of him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know during the course of the book exactly what happened at the beginning or exactly what his purpose is, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think the theme of this book is?
That's scary.
Tessa?
I think the theme of the book is that his parents die, so he can't really find a home. So then he just lives in this graveyard with ghosts.
That's
So I think what Tessa's trying to say is that at the very beginning of the book, he lost his home. And I think one of the themes of the book, and I think she's right about this, is probably that we can find many different ways to find a home. There are many different things that can constitute a home. Does that sound right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that's good. I think that assuming that a home has to take a certain look or a certain element or has to comport with certain things that society says is not always right. A home can take many forms. And I think Home is people that care about you and love you and are willing to sacrifice for you. And I think that would be a great example of a theme of this. That's one theme. You could come up with others, but certainly I think that's an acceptable one. All right, so then here's your assignment for today, okay? And we're going to talk more about theme tomorrow. But today's assignment, and you guys need to have your writing utensils down, I want you guys to write down 10, it can be a movie, it can be a book. Okay, so think of any movie you want, 10 different movies or books, and then tell me what you think that theme is. Because I want to go over with each of you tomorrow the 10 things. So like, I'm going to give you some examples, and I don't want you to use these. But if we took the theme of, pick a big famous movie that you guys have seen, Finding Nemo, okay? If we took Finding Nemo, which is a movie you guys have all seen, and it's about...
Don't ever disobey your parents.
Yes, that would be an acceptable theme, but I think the other theme is that if you shelter someone all their life, they will never learn how much they can really do. Right?
Yeah,
and so Marlon wants to keep him safe, but there's a balance between keeping someone safe and not allowing them to stretch and grow. Okay? Mm-hmm. So there's certainly that theme between Marlon and his son. There are other themes too, and that has to do with Marlon, who lost his wife and children and never really recovered. And so you could say, if you hide after a loss, you will never recover from it. Right?
Yeah.
So there are a bunch of different themes we could get just from Finding Nemo, and those would all be correct answers, okay? But especially like for Tessa and Emmy, theme is newer for you. I want you guys to really focus on not writing down what happens in the story. Like Finding Nemo is about a fish who, swims away even though his dad told him not to and is caught by a fisherman and his dad has to save him. That's not the theme. That's like a plot summary. Do you guys understand?
Yeah.
The theme has to do with what lesson or story could I be learning from this story, okay? So I want you guys to think about the theme, and we'll talk about the importance of theme later. Some people write their story, especially genre fiction. What do I mean by genre fiction?
I don't know.
Okay, so fiction in general just means it's a made-up story, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about genre fiction, we're talking about things like romance, science fiction, fantasy, mystery, thriller, okay? Mystery,
YA.
usually police procedurals where like someone died and the police come in to try and solve who it was, okay?
So like.
Well, YA is just a big category, like adult or young adult. But when I say, fantasy, okay, then if I'm talking about straight up fantasy, not contemporary fantasy, which is set on Earth, but straight up fantasy is set on another world that does not operate under our rules, right? If I'm talking about, but my point, we're getting far away, okay? Yeah. It doesn't matter about defining genre. What I was trying to tell you guys is that some writers in genre fiction don't even try. They don't even think about the theme. They just write a story. Guess what? There's usually a theme in their book anyway. Even though they haven't tried for one, there's typically a theme. Because, as we'll talk about later, or I already told you guys in the last lessons, why do humans care about stories?
Because you're learning from the story.
Yes, we listen to the story to try and learn something from it. We want to learn, and we either want to say, I already knew that, I'm a genius. Or we want to say, I didn't realize that. That's a misconception or something I didn't know that I've learned. And theme is one of the biggest things that we can learn from a story. So typically, if you're doing your job right, your book will end up having a theme, even if you didn't intend it to have one, okay?
Do you do
So
that?
a lot of times, so for instance, I wrote a book called Finding Home. It's the 6th book in my Finding series. Yep. And so in that one, I thought a lot about the two characters. I thought about the guy and the girl who were going to be in these stories and who they were and what shaped them. And I thought about what difficulties each of them struggled from, what their problems were. And so I didn't think about the theme, but there definitely is a theme in that book, even though I never consciously thought. But sort of I knew that was the theme because what did I name it? Finding Home. And the two characters, one of them was adopted and she always kind of wondered if she fit in with her family and if she would have fit in better with her birth mom. And the other guy, Cole, wasn't adopted, but his father passed away, and then his stepfather never adopted him. And so he always felt like he didn't quite belong. And so both of them are looking for that sense of belonging that we get from having a home. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the theme could be, sometimes the only thing keeping us from our home is our acceptance of it. They both had homes. They both had people with whom they fit in and a place where people loved them, but they didn't feel like it because they kept looking for something else. So was there a theme?
Yeah.
Yes. Did I think of that theme before I wrote it?
No.
No, I thought about these two characters and what they were dealing with, and I ended up with a book that has a theme. I think that's extremely common. But frequently people will think about, I want to write a book about this. So you can come at it from so many different directions.
Brush your teeth
okay?
or you'll get a death.
That's more like a moral of the story. But look, so I want you guys to write down 10. Okay, so 10 movies, 10 books, I don't care which. And then I want you to write down a theme. They can just be one line. It could be Finding Nemo. The theme is, you should always listen to your parents.
So we're
Finding Nemo. You could even write the same movie and 4 different themes. That will count. I need 10 things about a theme. Okay, so I want you to write the movie or book and then tell me the theme.
Oh.
And it could be the same movie or book for 4 different themes and then a different movie or book. Okay, does that make sense?
Yep.
That's our homework for today, okay?
So 10 books.
Ooh, am I in it?